All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 16th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. The time is now 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order and we'll kick it off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we move forward with our agenda, we do have a remote participant tonight. As with past meetings, I'll entertain a motion to allow remote participation this evening.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Leary, a second by Ms. Douglas.
Perfect.
Discussion? We'll do a roll call vote for the duration of this evening. Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Ms. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Douglas?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Stevens and Mr. Barca?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Mr. Hayes, if you could just give us a brief explanation about why you're remote this evening and if there's anyone with you.
I am by myself this evening and my continued concerns about COVID-19 and its variants.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right, next up is public input. Would anybody care to speak to the board this evening? Hearing none, I know we have a pretty full house in the room tonight, given we're reviewing town and school warrant articles, but we'll move it forward. There is a second round of public input at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. Any changes or additions to tonight's agenda from committee members? All right, hearing none. Correspondence, I did circulate a few updates to Mr. Sullivan last night. There were a couple of updates that came in today. Allow me to read them into the minutes. We had our town budget report circulated on December 10th. Thank you again to the town for sending that across. Also on December 10th, we did receive the December 9th meeting minutes. That was forwarded to the committee on the 14th. We also have on December 14th and December 16th town warrant article documents that were shared with the committee from the town. Thank you, Town Administrator Brown. On December 14th, we had amendments from Mr. Hayes to our minutes, which were reflected in the revised minutes circulated by Mr. Sullivan. So that's all set. On December 16th, we have earlier today, I shared Excel files with the committee, as I mentioned I would last week. Two files. One is historical information on the school from 2011 through current, both with the original budget as well as the actual expenses for all of those years. So the committee has that, as well as the infamous Excel file for this current year for FY23, in case anybody's interested. And then also today I received a note from Mr. Hayes that he'll be remote tonight. In addition to that, an email came in maybe 30 minutes ago from Mr. Taylor. He will be here. He had a flight delay. He expects to be about 30 minutes late. Anything else from other committee members? All right. That covers correspondence. Next up are the amended December 9th minutes.
What were the changes? Because I don't know that if I got them, I didn't see them.
Mr. Hayes, did you want to just briefly review the changes you submitted?
I didn't see them on the email. So if I had one clarification, I wanted to make sure I'm not.
It was about the intention was about correcting the reason for him being remote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So my only comment is, I just had it because you mentioned there's a comment that says that I disagreed with the backroom deal because of the negative connotation. That's true, but I also believe it was an inaccurate characterization because I stated that it was discussed publicly. So it wasn't anything backroom about it. It was very open. So that's what. So it was a negative connotation, and because it's inaccurate. So
would you like to amend the minutes?
Yes. I would like to amend the minutes to include the clarification that I disagreed with it because of the the negative connotation, and because I believe it was just a completely inaccurate characterization, since the discussions were held in public meetings with members present.
Can you reflect that in the minutes? It sounds more like tone than anything.
No, but it's just like it's clarifying. It's not just negative. It's not just the negative connotations.
Okay.
Because it was also
I gotcha.
Inaccurate.
I remember saying that.
All right.
I know I don't want it to go 3 years ago from now. Say, well,
Would you like to see the amended minutes once again before we vote on them?
I'm good. So if you would like to, whatever you're comfortable with, sure.
I'll entertain a motion from the committee.
Yeah,
I
Mr.
have
Carter.
one minor
Oh,
correction.
please.
I'm just referred to as a Mr. Harrison at one point in the. So
Oops, copy paste.
just be consistent with the misses. That would be great. Thank you.
And Mr. Hayes, go ahead.
Reasonable request.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't receive the amended minutes.
Yeah.
And if I did, then I didn't see the changes.
Yeah.
Because, anyways, forward them over to me if you would.
Yep, I will recirculate them to the committee. No problem at all. After, why don't we wait
Yeah,
on the
let's
minutes?
table them to the
Yeah,
6th.
we'll table them to January 6th so everyone has a chance to actually see it and sign off.
Yep, thank you. And
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Move to next meeting.
That one's my birthday. Do you have to come?
What is it?
January
All right. Next up on our agenda is town business. So I'll turn it over to Town Administrator Brown. And the last time we actually took a look at the town budget and information was October 21st when we did some voting. It was great to get an update over the past month or month and a half or so since we made those votes.
Okay, great. So thank you for having us back. We enjoyed the break.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We, so as you know, going first and starting the budget, putting the budget together in late August, we don't have a lot of the figures in yet. We talked about that. So as we finished things, discussions with the budget committee back in October, we still had some unfinished business. So if you go to the budget and where you have the different tabs down at the bottom, summary, tax impact, and tax cap. If you can click on the tax cap tab and scroll all the way down to a yellow box. Andrew has it there.
Figure out how to make it bigger. I will do that.
Just want to point out some of the changes that have occurred. So Chairman Cutter and I were just reviewing the numbers a little earlier, and the number where I believe we left off at $7,425,719 does not match Chairman Cutter's number. So we're kind of at a difference of like $600,
Yeah.
we think. So that's going to need to be, we're going to have to research that and figure out where we're off, but I'm not, greatly concerned about that. The next numbers down are the changes that have occurred since we last met. So the first one is advertising and regional associations. We had an increase. We actually received the New Hampshire Municipal Association dues, and they increased $163. And part of me was like, do I really want to, bring that forward to the budget committee? But I think for like the last 2 years, I have not adjusted the increase because we end up here and we actually know the number. And I thought it's worth bringing it back to you and see if we can get it current and then sort of monitor it going forward in the next couple of years. The rates are always going to be coming in after Thanksgiving. I think they have their annual meeting and set the rates. The fire chief contract, I'm pretty sure you're all aware that we were in negotiations with the fire chief. We were able to come to an agreement. A couple of things that we accomplished. We were able to increase his work hours from 24 hours to 28 hours per week. And the compensation package in the first year was a 3% adjustment to his wage. So we had a lot of discussions about this position, the added responsibilities, the workload, and we don't see that those items disappearing in the near future at all. So we think this was a good contract to get the position itself moving more towards a full-time position, more hours here working in the department. So that resulted in a $12,128 increase. The fire hydrants, we have agreed to a settlement agreement. All major parties have agreed. And although it's not ratified yet, there is no reason to believe that it's not going to be ratified. And the result is a decrease in our hydrant rental fees or public fire protection of $61,973. The EMS Code Red, that's the alert messaging software that we use. This is another one, much like the New Hampshire Municipal Association for a couple of years, but by the time we get the actual software cost, the annual licensing, We've already kind of concluded our discussions. That increased $304. The recreation fields, at the last time we met, I think we had all heard that the current contractor, which was a local business, we're all very hopeful that that business would be able to renew their contract. We had a provision in there that we could do a direct negotiations and try to renew it, but that just wasn't possible, and they had to go out to bid, and kind of came in where we were led to believe that the pricing was heading in a direction, wasn't down, it was going to be going up. So the contract for maintaining our rec fields, along with some other utility type maintenance work, some brush hogging and just perimeter type maintenance a couple times a year, increased the line item there $32,301. Gas, I know Mr. Hayes, I think you were going to be looking at this, but a recent review of where we're at. We had budgeted $2.75 a gallon, based on the link that I have in the budget using the EPA's or Department of Energy's forecast. They're putting gas right now, regular gasoline, at about $3 a gallon. So I've adjusted that from $2.75 to $3 a gallon. That increased that line $4,395. So it gives us a bottom line budget. Again, we give or take $600 here, but of $7,413,037. Now, the reason that these highlights are on the tax cap tab is because at this point in time, everyone's got a lot of questions about where we're at with the tax cap, and with that revised number, it puts you at the operating budget at below the tax cap at $72,165. And then I'll just quickly mention this to you, and then we'll kind of discuss how we want to proceed forward. But I think it's important for you to understand that the articles that we'll be discussing this evening, the way they're laid out on the warrant, Article 5, Human Service Agencies, the number has come in at $21,255. That, if approved, would obviously increase the tax cap, but we're still under $50,910. There's an article asking for a full-time highway position at $41,736. That represents half the cost. We're looking at having this position start July 1st if it's approved. That brings your tax cap closer to zero at just under $9,174. And then we're going to have a discussion about getting the authority to create a full-time SRO officer. This position really is taking a part-time position within the department and moving it up to full-time status. So in the first year of implementation, there would not be a cost. Also, you heard some discussions about a part-time clerk position, creating this part-time clerk position with no benefits, somewhere around 20 hours a week, would be about $9,144. With that article, it puts you at about $30 under the tax cap. So then Article 10 is the fire engine, doing a lease purchase with a payment due in 2022 in the amount of $108,691. We like to believe that number is a little higher than we think. As we get closer to March, we think we'll get it a little lower. But again, with COVID and everything going on, who knows? But that obviously is going to be an article that will be over the tax cap. The other articles that remain are using the unassigned fund balance to just really try to put some funds back in some of our expendable trust funds, establish them at a level that we think they should be at. And the last two articles, Article 21 and 22, have to do with the conservation fund and some caps that the previous town meeting had put on place, and really trying to have a discussion about lifting that cap from 1 million to 2.5 million. And since we got caught this year with exceeding the 1 million cap, taking those funds that were captured and putting them in the farmland capital reserve fund. So we can talk about those more in detail as we go through them individually. But that's kind of where you're at in regard to the tax cap. Your first few articles there, you're under, and the fire engine is going to put you over pretty much dollar for dollar.
Few questions, if I may. We need to resolve the $600 delta then, because that's going to directly impact our ability to potentially vote on at least one of these warrant articles.
On the, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So that'll be pretty critical. Secondly, is the rec commission or the field maintenance, is that contract now part of this budget? I have it on display, so I haven't looked.
It is,
If not,
it's
can
part
we get a
of,
copy of it?
it's not yet in the budget committee's budget. It's in the selectmen's. So it's in the, in that yellow box. If you go back and you start at this 7.4 million,
Yep.
and my additions and subtractions kind of brings you to that 7,413.
Understand it. My question is more, can we see the contract?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Other questions from other committee members?
The fire engine lease, I assume that's a brand new truck. We're not trying to purchase used.
No, we are due to the, and I'm not going to really try to answer those questions. I believe we have our deputy chief here. But right now our proposal is to purchase a new vehicle, a new engine. And primarily that's looking at the age of the entire fleet. It really just wouldn't make any sense to bring a used vehicle into a fleet that's already really stressed with age, wear and tear.
Well, it depends on the age, right? If we're talking 5 years old, then it's not too bad. I was just
And
curious.
we also were advised by someone in the community that runs a lot of heavy duty trucks that we needed to be very careful about purchasing used diesel engines due to some of the air emission standards and the things that they did to the engines to abate that, and some of the serious complications that those vehicles are having. So a used engine about 5 years old kind of put us in that engine design that I guess out there in the construction world, everyone's having a lot of problems with.
I can't imagine there's a huge market for used fire trucks that
There-
are only a few years old.
We have a neighboring town that cycles through fire trucks on a 5-year basis.
Yeah. But those, again, if you're talking about neighboring towns around us, you're talking about the city of Manchester, the town of Londonderry, Hudson, those trucks, those are frontline trucks going in and out of that building quite a few times a day and sitting there idling a lot. I see them. I live in Londonderry, but the trucks are out of the building all the time. So that's a different used truck than a Litchfield used truck.
I appreciate that, but I have to consider too from a taxpayer perspective. Are we
Well,
getting-
I
so
totally agree with you
that's-
that.
While we're on this topic, why not, let's hear from Deputy
Yeah.
Chief. Would you mind?
Well, you want to wait till we get into the articles, or?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the articles now. You want to talk about it now?
Whatever you'd like to do. This is your show.
Yeah, let's talk about it now since we're on point. We're just going to need a microphone. If we're on point, why open it up again?
I'm just here for the discussion. However you'd like to run it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So go ahead. So would you like me to answer that question?
I've asked it, sure.
So typically you don't want to buy somebody else's problem. We bought a rescue truck from the town of Londonderry about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And it took us 3 years to get through the engine problems that we were not told about of the truck when we purchased it. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars and sent it to 3 different companies before we got the truck the way it should be. And then we found out after the fact through the firefighters, oh yeah, it blew smoke for a long time. And yeah, it burned oil for a long time. We were aware of that. But when we asked about it, because we thought we were getting a good deal, and we did get a good deal on the truck, we weren't told about some of those little issues. But normally you don't buy, nobody gets rid of a good fire truck unless it's a private department from down south somewhere that folds and goes under, you're not going to get a deal on a fire truck. The last fire truck that we bought, the one that we're currently running, the newest truck, that was a demo truck. And what a demo truck does is each builder tries to build 3 or 4 trucks. They send it across the country to show you their quality of build and whatnot. And then afterwards, you can get a good deal on it. Trouble is, like right now, we looked at that already. The committee has looked at that. And there are no demo trucks because everybody else is already. City of Manchester, they crashed 2 fire trucks about 6 months ago. And that's what they had to do. They had to buy a demo truck in order to put it back into their fleet. So.
Now, it's not to say I disagree with the need of a fire truck. I've been here for years saying we need a plan to replace our fire trucks. I just want to make sure that however we purchase it, we're getting the most bang for the buck.
Right.
So if it's a matter of once bitten, twice shy, we have a history of problems coming from those. That's a whole different story than if, no, we have a solid relationship. We know what we're getting. We could save 200 grand. Well, it's a different story.
So a fire truck is a custom built truck. And basically, unless you have the right people on your committee, you're building the truck from the frame rails up. And we were very fortunate years ago that our former deputy fire chief worked for Manchester Mac for many years and designed and built fire trucks and actually worked for a couple apparatus manufacturers. We made out okay, but I know a lot of horror stories of other fire departments that somebody didn't know something about suspensions and somebody didn't know something about motors. And so a lot of times these trucks that you find on the market for a good deal aren't really a good deal when you get underneath it and look at why they are getting rid of it.
No, I appreciate the insight. Like, listen, I've always been the saying that, the lowest bid is not always the lowest cost. So I appreciate the explanation.
Any other questions for Deputy Chief on the fire truck?
Is there a reason why the lease that you are looking at is at that 108,000? Like if you were to stretch out that lease, would it be less per year?
It would be less. I got a copy of that too, right?
I have it. I didn't bring it with me. We are looking for
So,
a less
And I'm also wondering, I guess,
finance period.
from the town side, is the only reason why you're putting these warrant articles first because they happen to fit under the tax cap? Is that actually what is needed, or is the fire truck actually what's needed and we need to find a way to work it into under the tax cap so that the budget?
No, I can't say that. That's question's been asked before, and the warrant is laid out in the order it is, not to try to prioritize the articles. I really think it's laid out because we always start off with the operating budget. If you had a union contract, that would be the second question. The human service agencies is it used to be part of the operating budget. It's kind of considered operating budget, but it's been pulled out. So I think that's why that's there. And then we talk about positions, and then we start getting into capital. And that's, so the fire engine is kind of,
It's just the first capital.
the first capital. Yeah.
But if you say they both fit under the tax cap, but we could only pick one to support, what would the town recommend to support for the budget committee?
I don't know if I could answer that. I mean, that would be a discussion with the board of selectmen. But I think what you're indicating is that even though if the order did not change, the budget committee can still decide, what level of funding they want for the operating budget. And if they want to support Article 5, 6, and 8, in a way to try to see if you can get the 108,000 under the cap.
That's what I'm wondering, is that,
You have
or did the board of selectmen kind of already give us that answer with the way that they voted to recommend the articles?
I don't want to speak for the board, but it's just laid out the way it's historically has been laid out. And I think, that if
Even without the other articles, the fire engine puts us over the cap.
it's such a large amount over the cap that is so hard, the little positions that you need there they're really needed. And I think that's why there wasn't even a discussion about should the fire engine be the number 2 priority.
Okay.
because it's such a large amount over the cap. It's really, I think, it's if it ends up before the voters, it's going to be a question to the voters. Do you want to replace this aging engine? And, it's going to be up to the voters.
But I just know that if it says not recommended by the budget committee, that sways a lot of people.
It's a
So I
concern.
don't want to.
That's when we storm Facebook and say, listen,
No,
Which-
we've,
Can't
Which is-
actually do it, right? Like,
you make that argument, say we would have loved to have supported it, but we can't
We've done
because
that
we've absolutely
for
done
the
that in the
last several
past.
years, and articles have still passed.
Yes.
You know what I
Okay.
mean? So
We-
it really is dependent upon, the community understanding,
Mhm.
the rationale for our vote and making the decision.
Okay.
Right, and that's how we'll certainly present it at the budget hearing.
Mhm.
It's certainly how it will be presented at deliberative. And
and we could have presented this article in a couple of different ways so that it would have come under the tax cap and it would have allowed the budget committee to determine if they wanted
Zero
to
first
support
year
it.
payment, like
Two
the-
things.
yeah.
We've done lease purchase payments before where you don't make the first payment until year 2023. So you'd have the authorization from the citizens. There'd be no tax impact for 2022. We could have reached into our unassigned fund balance and paid the $100,000. So there'd be no tax impact for 2022. We are a little nervous that the discussion about the need for fire truck will get lost over the way that maybe people are trying to fund it. And we don't want that debate to go on publicly between now and March.
Okay. Especially after the last time, people felt. I thought we were as transparent as possible with it, but people still felt a little.
with the communications tower equipment, that's how it was funded. Zero first year, so we could vote and approve it in, and then they delayed the payment to the second year.
okay.
Right, but there was a lot of debate about that funding mechanism
As
because
opposed to the new.
some people felt it was slid in
Mhm.
into the budget just to stay under the tax cap.
Right.
And
I
then-
think we're trying to avoid that.
Because the discussion was good as to why we needed it, and that kind of got lost.
Yep.
So another question is: this is the first engine we're replacing in a while.
Mhm.
I assume there's going to be a second one in the near future. Is that after the 5 years, payments done?
Well,
Or?
so so at some point, the town needs to get back on a replacement program.
Mhm.
Because right now, typically before, a fire truck would be built in just slightly under a year.
Mhm.
Now they're talking up to a year and a half, even closer to almost 2 years.
All your parts are on a cargo ship in the middle of the ocean.
Right. So the thing is, if this was approved in March, we're not going to see this truck until probably it won't be in service till probably 2023. And the way a fire truck purchase works, you don't pay for it. You don't make your first payment until it's delivered. So if it gets approved in March of 22,
Mhm.
the first payment's not going to be until probably like July of 23.
So then, from that perspective, does it make sense to push off the first payment and
Yeah.
have the discussion if you're not actually going to incur the cost? Do you?
That makes more sense. I would agree in that scenario.
And the other thing that I have too with the so there's two other things to this. So can't get a locked in price because it's fluctuating so much. The price of the truck over last year went up $37,000. There may or may not be a price increase after the first of the year. If it does, they're talking up to maybe $23,000. So what we were looking for was it wouldn't exceed $720,000, but it's going to more than likely be a lot less than that. We're also still waiting. The committee's been very diligent, meeting and taking out things that we don't need to have, or you know what I'm saying. We've looked at some pricing that we've gotten, and we're very confident we're going to be able to knock a lot more money off of the cost of the truck. However, the variable is we don't know what's going to happen if that price increase is going to come in or not. A couple vendors say, yes, there's going to be a price increase. Another vendor says they don't think there's going to be a price increase. So we were coming forward with the pricing we have now. And obviously, if it gets approved or it gets supported by this board, on the deliberative floor, we would adjust it to whatever the final price will be.
if that pricing goes up, would you have the opportunity to extend that lease in order to offset that price increase?
Yeah, so right now, what we're looking at is we're coming forward right now. We were given a 3-year, 5-year, 7 or a 10-year option.
Looking at the 7.
And just based on talking with Mr. Brown, and we were looking at trying to do probably the 7-year. You can save a little bit more money by going to a 10-year. It brings it down to 78,000.
On an annual basis, but not on an overall basis, right?
Well, no,
Yeah.
no, it's like financing anything. I mean,
That's why I always go for the shorter period. So I'm like, go 5 years as opposed to 10.
so, and then the other thing that we had brought forward is the company. If we go with their leasing company, which is actually the same one the town of Litchfield uses, they will knock off $15,000 off the top of the price of the truck if we go through their lease company. So there are some savings that we can do. I just don't have the final number yet. So it won't be the most it would ever be would be 720.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think it's going to be 720. We think it's going to be a lot less than that, but we can't give you a number yet.
Well, my view, just to close out that part of the conversation, is if we're not taking delivery, and we're fairly certain we're not taking delivery until fiscal year 23, and probably mid.
Well, it'll probably be late 22, but it won't be in service till like the beginning of 23.
So we would owe payment next year. So I'm sorry, when you made that comment, I thought that meant we weren't receiving it until 23, so we wouldn't be paying it until 23, so we wouldn't need it until.
So the time frame they've given us is 15 to 18 months is what they're looking at, but it could be before that, it could be after that. That's just the time frame.
January 1st, 2023. You good?
Right. So that's the only reason I can't really give you a definitive answer is I don't really know. There's been some fire trucks that have come through sooner because it all comes down to, just like with your car, chips and the other components that are going on. Some departments have lucked out and the trucks are coming in on time, and others have been delayed.
It's
waiting
probably
for parts.
better anyway, just from a long-term planning perspective, it's probably better to have this budgeted for next year than it is the following anyways, with potentially a new school.
So, yep, that's a different discussion. So awesome. If it makes sense that if it's going to actually potential to be billed to next year to have it in the budget. So, and this is, I'm sorry, you said 7 years. This is the 7.
That's what we're proposing. I mean, like I said, we've been given prices of a 3, a 5, a 7, and a 10. So it's whatever the town, is most comfortable doing. In the past, we've always been on a 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go more than a 7-year plan because obviously, the other trucks are at the 27 to, there'll be a couple of trucks will be over 30 years old.
Right.
By the time, if this truck gets approved, we receive it.
I'd be interested in knowing what is the cost differential on an annual basis to go from a 7 to a 5. I mean, we're already over the tax cap. So if we're talking 10 grand to save like 60 in interest, then it might be a conversation worth having.
That's right there if you want to.
I like spending less interest.
Well, it jumps. So a 5-year, if you're going to do a lease purchase for 5 years, the annual payment would be $146,959.
That's 20. That's 38,000.
146,959.
That's 38 grand saving additional each year. How much would we be saving in interest over the period?
It's not.
Okay.
It's
Just,
not here,
I mean, if
so-
we're spending an extra 40 grand a year over a couple of years to save a lot of money, then it's worth it. But if it breaks even, then it's not. So.
How about other committee members? Other questions?
I have a question.
Please.
So, Mr. Brown, we had talked about during each of the departments that came through, and I think it was the highway department that has a truck that is extremely old as well. Where would you rank in terms of all your vehicle needs across all town departments? Where would you put this particular truck? Would this be in like the top 10, top 5 needs?
This truck right here would be
Yes.
the number one vehicle.
Number 1.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was on our capital improvement plan as well.
It's a $16,000 difference.
Look at you.
Did you say 16?
16,000.
You would save
Interest.
16.
In savings, you go 5 years versus 7 years.
Oh, I had
That,
25.
that's
You're 25.
in interest over the course.
I did the what is the 108 times 7,
Yeah.
and then the what do you say? It's
And the
146 times
146
7.
nine.
Times 5. Yeah.
So that gets lost in the noise. It makes people more comfortable on the.
All right. Anything else on the fire engine? Mr. Hayes?
Well, the only question I have is probably a very simple question. I know that the truck is 26 years old, but is there anything wrong with it? We don't put a lot of use on it. We don't put a lot of miles on it. And it's certainly been undercover. So is this something that I know under the capital improvement, it should be done at a certain point in time, but is there a burning desire to do it? Is there something wrong with the truck that we cannot repair or
So it's a 27-year-old truck. And actually, we just had all the trucks sent out in August and September to be evaluated at a fire truck repair / builder. And this truck, we actually found out, needs probably $30,000 to $60,000 worth of repairs, which we as the fire department can't see putting that kind of money into a 27-year-old truck. The water pump needs to be overhauled and rebuilt, and that's anywhere from $15,000 to $32,000, depending on what they find once they take the pump apart. And then there's an additional, I think it was like $15,000 for some transmission work. This truck actually was our first run truck for 7 years and did the majority of the calls in the town, been to a lot of major fires, pumped for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And it actually has double the mileage and double the engine hours than any of the next comparable trucks that we own.
So based on the amount of work that's needed, is it even in service right now?
It's in service. It can be used as some water that's leaking into the transfer case, but because of the fact that it's in the back right now, and we use it for brush or for a structure fire, whatnot, it's not as bad right now. But our first due engine that we've been using, the newest one, so far, I just did the numbers today. In 2021, it was out of service 27 days out of the year. We've had some major repairs to it. It just went back in service a couple days ago. Had some no start issues. We've had suspension work. I mean, regular wear and tear for a truck, but it's our newest truck at I think it's like 17 or 18, 19 years old.
I mean, you
All
have to
right,
understand.
follow-up question. Did we buy this fire truck new?
Brand new,
And
yes,
if
sir.
we put in, let's say, $100,000 worth of work, can we expect to get another 5 years out of it and then replace it? Or is that something that's not reasonable?
I don't know about you, but I would never put that kind of money into a truck that old. I look at it, somebody just said to me today, you see people that have, rebuilt 1952 Chevy pickup trucks and they're pristine. It's a great truck, but would you have that truck putting out a house fire? Or, it's a great truck, it's in great service, but it's behind the times and safety features for the firefighters, seat belts, rollover protection, all the stuff that didn't exist back in 1995. So there's a lot more elements to it other than just fixing the pump on the truck.
I think Mr. Hayes too, just to understand that we're looking at emergency vehicles and trying to manage the fleet. So even though this is a 27-year-old truck and that maybe we could throw some money at it and keep it running for another 3 years, by not replacing it and having a brand new truck come in a year and a half from now and becoming the frontline engine and letting some of those older engines that are acting as frontline now step back and be secondary engines, we're trying to manage the fleet so we can take pressure off the truck that's 19 years old and trying to get another 10 years out of those trucks. If we don't do anything here this year or next year, we're just going to compound the problem where the citizens in this town at some point in time will be looking at a question of trying to purchase 3 fire engines in 1 year. And that's going to be a difficult decision for the town.
So
And that's what it is. I mean, I don't think it's about trying to keep a 27-year-old truck running. It's trying to get a new truck in there to be the frontline truck, take some pressure off the older aging fleet and managing the fleet.
So speaking of the fleet, is there any possibility of reducing the overall fleet by selling off any of those vehicles to help offset the cost of getting a new truck?
You're gonna get very, I mean, for the truck that we're looking at replacing, that the parts, it's hard to get parts for the truck. I mean, it's not really worth a lot to somebody else to take it over.
Not just a 1-for-1 swap as far as, like, I'm just talking the overall fleet. I mean, it just seems that
I wouldn't be.
there's a lot of vehicles for a small town. Is there some areas there where we can say, you know
Well-
what, do we need all of these?
So that's based on your knowledge and knowledge of fire trucks. When there's a fire, we have a certain flow that we have to be able to provide when a house is on fire. Our engines, the older engines have a 1,250 gallon per minute pump. Our tanker and the newer engine have like a 1,500 gallon per minute pump. You got to flow a lot of water. The town's insurance ratings for everybody's house that's in town is all based on how much water flow we can provide over a certain period of time. And then also, just like what I just said, we've had trucks. Last week, we had 2 trucks out of service at the same time. Now, if you have a fire in town, you get 2 engines that can show up, not 4.
But if you get a nice new truck, then at that point, maybe you don't have to worry about maintaining 2 other trucks as far as a backup, and maybe you can just maintain 1 backup.
You can't put a fire out with 2 trucks. And the other thing,
2
too,
trucks and other town assistants. You can't
rely on other towns, sir. Unfortunately, the day and age that we're in, we're providing more assistance to Londonderry and Hudson and even Manchester than they're providing to us, because they are so busy with calls, they can't even keep up with the calls that they have. We just went to Bedford the other day, and we were among probably 10 communities that were there trying to help them put a house fire out, but they still had to have all of their stuff with 10 other communities there to mitigate the fire. It depends on size of building, the age of the building. There's a lot of variables to what you need for equipment, apparatus, and firefighters. So there's no easy answer to give you for it. Big difference between fighting a fire at Wilson Farms and fighting a fire at a ranch-style house right down the street. Big difference. So you can't just say, oh yeah, you can do it with 1 or 2 engines. Everything that the town of Litchfield has, that's what we found that we needed by the insurance company in order to provide the protection, adequate protection for the community. So by taking the truck out, we lose a lot. We lose a truck A to get 6 firefighters to a fire, the equipment that's on it, the hose that's on it. And again, you can't rely on the other community. We've had plenty of times where we're waiting a half an hour because if Hudson has a fire at the same time and they're using mutual aid like we are, now you're going to wait for mutual aid to come double the distance from somewhere else to come help us. We have to be able to provide for our own if we can.
Any other questions for the deputy chief?
Yeah, just a quick question. If we're supplying assistance to another community that's having a fire, we get paid for that? Do we have to pay them when they come to our rescue?
No, it's a mutual thing. So it's a mutual response. We send a tanker to Bedford. When we get a fire, Bedford sends an engine or a tanker to us. So it's a mutual benefit. So we pay our own people to go to Bedford. They pay their own people to come here.
Yeah, the way you made it sound is that we're providing perhaps a disproportionate amount of assistance to other communities because of their number of fires versus ours. That's why I asked the question.
All right, maybe I didn't mean to give that impression. it's basically, we give a little, they give a little, it depends on what it is. I mean, we have brush equipment, so in the summer, we provide brush assistance to towns. We don't have a ladder truck. So when we get a building fire, Londonderry or Hudson brings their ladder truck to us. So instead of all of us having all of the same equipment, it's kind of like sharing the equipment where they give us something we don't have, we give them something they don't have.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Final questions.
I'm still hung up at 1995, which was 27 years ago.
It was only yesterday.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Appreciate the presentation. Mr.
That's
Brown?
right. You had mentioned looking at other financing. I'm sorry.
No, go, please.
Other financing options like using underspend, or I know that the town just received ARPA funds and the amount of something over $900,000. Is there a reason that those avenues weren't considered as
As of right now, we're not confident that we can use the ARPA funds to make to purchase a fire engine. And if we thought we could do that, you wouldn't see it as a warrant article, because the
Right.
selectmen could make that decision on their own. And until, but I don't know when if we're ever going to be able to get a direct answer that it's an eligible expense.
Okay.
They've been kind of reluctant to be able to come right out in black and white, say we have asked, and they come back with a lot of text that,
Right.
So the fear is right now is that using those funds, if it's not black and white, that if you make the purchase, once we submit our annual report a year later, they say, oh, that wasn't an eligible purchase. And now you owe the federal government $708,000. So
But
that's why you don't see that right now.
the reality is we have a fleet of a size that there probably should be a sizable investment every year anyway. And this is just restarting the maintenance program we once had. So,
Yeah. And
because you'll get if we get this fire truck now, in another couple of years, you need another fire truck, then you need some highway trucks, then we need some other stuff. And it
gets absorbed.
it's like like the capital improvements plan laid out. It's, hopefully one day this town will be able to get back on a financing plan where we are replacing one engine every 5, 7, 8 years and get that system going. I think what happened was that everyone knew that there was a need for a new station. There was a decision made not to purchase new engines because I guess maybe they were going to need to be custom made to fit, in the building. That was going to cost a lot. So the first priority was to get a new building and then try to buy the equipment that would fit in the new building.
Right.
So it's put everything behind in the fire department.
Other questions? Can we shift gears to the police?
Sure.
Chief Sergeant. So I know we have an SRO police officer position on warrant as well. You're next, Mr. Brown. I can see it.
I will let the chief start right off on this one. He's provided the Board of Selectmen with a presentation earlier Monday this week.
Yes, sir.
And he's very excited to talk to you about this.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator. Thank you for the time, Chairman Cutter, respected Budget Committee members. I apologize to Mr. Leary and Mrs. Harrison who have heard my passionate speech to promote this warrant article, which is a need of the police department. And I feel very comfortable to say that it's a need of the town. It's a need of the school district. When I spoke to the Board of Selectmen on Monday night, I focused a lot about the vision and also how fiscally it's the appropriate time to move forward with this position. When I met with the school board last night and Dr. Jetty, I expanded more on the vision. I highlighted how a goal and main priority for me when I when I had the honor to be assigned to the position of Chief of Police, one of my first goals and priorities were to pursue a full-time school resource officer and to reinstate the DARE program. As we all know, shortly after 2020, COVID comes in, things slow down. The town slowed down on spending. We didn't move things forward. It was not the right time to come forward. We were remote learning. Our part-time school resource officers left the schools and covered patrol shifts. I have great respect for the capital improvement process. I attended many of those meetings, and I think I've been very clear that I will never compete against other departments, the school. It is one team and it's one vision. And when I look at this position, this is something that benefits so many people within our community. Most importantly, our youth, our teachers, our school district, our parents. I'll focus a lot on the why fiscally this is the right time and the right way to move forward. Currently, we have a vacancy in the police department, and that is a permanent 32-hour a week with benefits, part-time school resource officer / patrol position. I bring in the patrol position because of COVID. That officer was assigned to the road. There's that vacancy. And the reason that you're seeing this warrant later in the process is because we were made aware of a Department of Justice grant. It is the COPS grant. We applied for that grant with the hopes to receive $125,000 that could be used over a 3-year period to fund this position. We were really excited. We felt confident, and we felt with the current salary and benefits that were budgeted for this 32-hour week part-time position with benefits, it would be very palatable for our Board of Selectmen, our Budget Committee, and our townspeople to utilize grant funding and the current salary and benefits and to work in this new full-time SRO. 3 communities in the state of New Hampshire were awarded this grant. Unfortunately, we were not one of them. That does not mean that we are not going to try again and continue to pursue grant opportunities for other needs of the department and the needs of the town. If we were to move forward with Article number 7 for a full-time police officer to hire July 1st in 2022, there is a 0 tax impact. In fact, the savings from my budget over those 6 months would be approximately $8,428. Moving forward to 2023, the increase would be approximately $41,000. As I look at how this position will function and what the assignment will be, the full-time SRO will follow a school schedule, September through June for the school year. Monday through Friday, they will have the options to utilize vacation time that won't need to be backfilled when the school is on vacation. In the summer, this position will become a utility position, and that will be one of the agreements for the officer who's assigned to this. And the purpose of that utility position is to cover earn time and to reduce overtime. And as I was preparing to come before you tonight, I would just like to highlight July of this year, there were 38 overtime shifts that were filled in the month of July. Those are 8-hour shifts and those are 10-hour shifts. Where we were currently short-staffed over the summer with an officer in the academy and bringing on new officers, most of those shifts were filled at 8 hours of overtime and 10 hours. So that's approximately 304 hours. And we could say that's $15,200 in overtime that we spent in the month of July, not including your 33.88% in retirement, which would be an approximate $5,000. Let's just take our full-time SRO, who knows they're going to cover July. They could certainly put in for some time off, but let's just say that for 40 hours a week, 4 weeks in July, they covered 160 hours of earned time. That's a savings of $8,000 in overtime, not to include our retirement cost. We're saving money. we can utilize this position to be fiscally responsible, to reduce that overtime line, and it will help even if we do have an officer who's assigned the military, even if we are down, that position does not need to be backfilled in the summer or vacation months. If they choose to take vacation, that's fine. But if they choose not to, if they want to work February vacation, usually there's 2 people who take the week off. We fill that with overtime. We will reduce the overtime. I don't want to focus too much on the importance of this position. But again, there's 3 things I've really highlighted. And it's 1, to ensure a safe school environment. It's 2, to create positive interactions between everyone involved in our school and the police department. And we will continue to build trust between the youth and that SRO. I have a great vision. I know we're short on time. I believe now is the time to strike. We went for the grant. Unfortunately, we were not successful. 0 tax impact. And we can turn this into a full-time. We can go from 32 hours a week to 40 hours a week. And the long-term commitment for who's assigned to this position, the return that we won't see fiscally, I don't know that we could put a price on it. For the safety of our schools and for the benefits it has. But I understand we have to talk numbers here. So from a number standpoint, now's the time, because as we know, next year, the capital improvement plan, there's other things, there's other big items. There are great needs of other departments. And I know down the road, even the police department is in that process. So I would ask you to support this. I'm forever grateful and thankful for the Board of Selectmen who supported this warrant article 500. And Dr. Jetty, Ms. Harrison, and her committee last night endorsed this, are willing to promote it and support it. I believe this will have a great, I feel very confident in $6,000 to $9,000 in the first full year that we can really see a reduction in overtime, and then consider that retirement costs, which are probably going to continue to drive upwards. I'm happy to move forward, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Chief. Great presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll open up to the committee. Please, Mr. Taylor.
I was just going to first say thank you for putting it as a warrant article. I feel like we've been seeing a lot of part-time positions in the budget become full-time, so I appreciate you going this way.
Thank you, Ms.
So,
Douglas.
but go ahead.
So, a couple of questions, Chief. So you mentioned as far as the safety side of things, and I've kind of always scratched my head at the fact that we have 1 SRO for 3 schools.
Correct. I
I think there could be an argument made that 1 SRO could easily, by running, be able to get between GMS and LMS. I mean, GMS and LMS in case of an emergency. But certainly the person at Campbell, should we actually be looking at the possibility of getting 2 SROs? And then also, if you had 2 SROs, how much more could you knock down that overtime budget?
Thank you. Currently, we have 1 part-time school resource officer who is, so initially we had 2 permanent part-time school resource officers who are 32 hours a week. I believe we benefit by phasing these out to moving these positions to full-time positions. That's a long-term goal. With the vacancy, with the resignation of Corporal Coral, it seemed like the perfect time to move forward. Again, it was one of my priorities and one of my goals. And as we looked at how it could work, we would have 40 hours a week dedicated. We have the second SRO 32 hours a week. So you'll see, and again, from an operational standpoint, I look forward to working with the school about where officers are assigned and what is going on. But my initial thought is 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday at the school, at the high school, and then the other 32 hours a week with the part-time officer or the full-time, meaning that they could switch between schools, would be utilized between the elementary school and the middle school. And yes, I believe now is necessarily not the right time to transition, at the same time to go for two. But I think if I saw our current SRO, David Donnelly, if he chose to retire for a second time, I would certainly speak with the school district, and I would look to increase to a full-time position. And now we're talking a ton of money we can save. It would be, there would be a great savings to utilize these utility roles. And again, when do people take vacation? February vacation, April vacation, and the summer. And like I talked about, I think when I was doing my math, we averaged 76 hours per week in July alone. You take these two officers, again, not to say that they're not going to take some time off in the summer, and I would encourage that. But when they're not, we're saving on a ton of overtime cost. So it's a great way to meet the needs of our town. I think it's a great way to enhance the security of our schools and how we work with our youth. And also, again, we're meeting the goals of the department. So I believe, yes, there would be an even greater savings, because as we look as throughout the year, here's an example too. There's been some hype about some stuff over social media. Because we don't have these dedicated school resource officers, if we're going to utilize other officers, sometimes it's community detail, sometimes it's overtime, that we're putting officers in the school. We can alleviate times like that because we'll have our full-time SRO, our part-time SRO, and maybe in the future, another full-time SRO. So I do think that's a great question. That is the direction long-term I'm looking. But again, I will never compete with any other department, but I will always bring forward when I believe it's the appropriate time and when everyone can benefit from this, and from the reasons that I've stated, and also from a fiscal standpoint.
Chief, just to clarify, because I was thinking along the same lines of Mr. Taylor. So if this warrant article were to pass as is, next year you would have one full-time SRO and one part-time SRO.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? Okay.
72 hours of SRO coverage during the week.
Would you mind just explaining, just for our, I'm sure we have tons of listeners tonight, why there's no tax impact for this?
Absolutely. So for 2022, we budgeted for a permanent part-time corporal. He had been with us for almost 10 years, and his salary was over $48,000. He did not contribute to the retirement system because he was already retired from the town of Londonderry. He did take health insurance, dental insurance, and then there's workman's comp and Medicare. So the total wages and benefits for the existing part-time position was $56,959. That was included in my budget for 2022. As he left, and as we were waiting for the grant to come, we didn't fill the position, because if we got the grant, we were going to really move forward with it right away. And the grant, I was actually on the phone with the town administrator when I clicked on and we got the notice that we didn't receive it. So we were waiting. So it was, is it beneficial to replace this part-time position where we're restricted by hours? And then comes, well, the cost going to July 1st, hiring a new entry-level police officer. And Karen and I planned for a two-person family plan for health, dental, and then your workman's comp, your Medicare, your salary, and the retirement is only $48,500. So that's where we see that savings. And again, if it's a certified officer who were to come in, or if we were able to get someone up and running quick, we can start utilizing them prior to the school year. My intention, with full transparency, is to assign from within. I'm not looking to hire an officer from outside. I think we have some fantastic, outstanding police officers who mirror the vision that I hold, that Dr. Jetty holds, that the school district has shared with me. and officers are excited to be assigned to this position. So we would look to backfill that patrol, and we would get an experienced, professional, community-oriented officer into our school district. So that's where that savings is from in year one. And even if I ran some numbers for if it was an officer who was hired with a year on or 3 years on, there's still savings. So a 3-year officer, based on their salary for 6 months, they're still just shy of a $3,000 savings. So we're really in a good position to move in and bump this 32-hour week position to a 40-hour full-time SRO.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you, I guess for those that don't know, can you explain what SRO does all day? What does their average day look like and things like that?
Absolutely. So one of the things moving forward, the vision of this position is probably going to change quite drastically. But one of the most important things for a school resource officer is to be vigilant. We need to be vigilant in our schools. We want our youth, our students, to see this officer as a mentor, as a teacher, as a coach. We envision this position taking on new extracurricular activities. Our first SRO, Sergeant Heath Savage, when he was assigned to the position, he was a basketball coach. It was amazing. He's coaching the students. He's having fun. He's creating lasting relationships. So the SRO comes in. There's also a sense of security. So what are those security measures? What does that look like? Again, when we see a police car parked out front or on the school property, people know there's a police officer here. So it's preparing for a critical incident. It's violence prevention. This position in an SRO now, it's about taking a proactive stance to prevent bullying. And that's on campus, off campus, cyberbullying, and on the bus. They provide emotional and psychological security. So they're able to assist the school in the event that there's a crime on campus per se. So we can intervene, we work with the staff. But more importantly, and the goal is to expand, is to create relations with our youth, to be a resource for our teachers, for parents to know who is here, who's interacting. The SRO acts as an informal counselor. Oftentimes, students will stop into the office and speak to the SRO. Moving forward, we'll see an SRO having lunch with our youth. It's about being mobile, being outside, being inside, being on the bus. And when we talk about those positive interactions, again, I explained they're a role model, they're a mentor, teaching and coaching. The beautiful thing is if we are able to see this warrant article passed by our citizens, the DARE program, we wouldn't have to pay overtime because our full-time officer will be teaching. So again, they've revitalized the DARE program. It sends a different message. And Ms. Harrison spoke to me last night and reminded me of the importance of these young, when our younger students, when we can create those relationships early on, they just grow and expand as they move forward and grow. So those are some of the things. In the past, we've done our mock accidents around prom season. So we want to educate our youth. And I've read new things that certain programs that different school districts are bringing forward, where they talk about winter driving, they talk about date rape, problems that our youth could face, where they could encounter peer pressure, again, in school, out of school, over social media. So we're looking to. We have a good foundation. We're really looking to expand that role. But that's essentially the basic function of an SRO.
Oh, that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Final questions for the chief? I would just ask that on the budget hearing night, which is January 13th,
Yes, sir.
if you wouldn't mind, as well as Deputy Chief, if you could be there. just in case of questions from the community.
Should have him present because I was gonna be like, we don't need this, and now I'm like, all right, look, can I vote yes now?
Thank you.
I can give you the entire budget hearing deck if you'd like.
And to Mr. Larry and Mrs. Harrison, I apologize again for being
No worries.
long-winded.
No worries. It's worth hearing again.
Yeah, it's tough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate your time.
Mr. Brown, you're up next.
Thanks, Chief.
I'm expecting a phenomenal pitch right now.
Listen, I will guarantee I'm as eloquent as the chief. I'll take a used guy. Gonna fill holes and potholes. And
Little
drive a truck.
WD-40 and you're good.
For a small fee, he'll make your pitch for you.
That's what I'm hoping. If I had known.
All right, so we have Article 6, which is the full-time highway position, also being presented this evening.
I was sad to see this one not pass the first time around, so I'm glad to see you guys are bringing it forward again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
How does it? I didn't do an analysis. How does it compare to the article from last year with the rates?
I don't know, but I just remember being like, I can't believe that one failed.
It was
34.
34 votes.
yeah.
Even I voted yes.
It was
So
two,
I mean, come on.
2 years ago. We didn't put it
Wasn't
back
last year's
on
the year
last
before.
year.
Whenever it was on, even I voted yes. So I was surprised it failed.
Well, the town, the townsfolk voted yes on the truck,
Mhm.
not a guy to drive it.
The greatest concern here in this department is really safety. I mean, that's the number one concern. You need to have a minimum to be out there on the highways and streets and doing work. You need to have a crew of at least 3 to be safe. And then, of course, you've got a crew that's going to be dedicated during the winter months, so they're not able to take earned time. And the summertime is when you're trying to take your earned time, get your breaks, but there's also so much work to do on maintaining the equipment, the roads, all the grass cutting and stuff. So I think the department, I think the taxpayers realize that having a highway department of 2 full-time individuals doesn't even come close to meeting the need of the community. And I think losing by a few votes like that is a positive sign that we just didn't do a good enough public relations, giving the information.
I mean, if you think about it, there's 2 of us. Josh lives in Concord, so 24/7, 365. I'm the on-call guy for the town. He takes vacation, I take vacation, so there's 6 to 8 weeks that we're alone.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? In the entire town, 163 road miles. So it's daunting at times. There are times when you're out there and he's shoveling, I'm in the machine. We have no one doing road safety. So it
Something
definitely,
happens.
with 100%, it comes down to safety, just not safe. Trying to do things alone, we have 2 jobs to do. He'll go that way, I'll go this way, and we're doing it by ourselves. If something happens, hopefully you got the radio, you can make a call. What chiefs are on. But that's it. Definitely just comes down to safety, 110% safety.
Okay, questions for Mr. Brown?
So for this, Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
As far as the the maintenance and upkeep of Troy, you and I had a spirited discussion about catch basins last year. I assume that would probably be part of the work that needs to be done. And then I guess the other question would be, can you kind of explain in terms of maintenance of a number of roads over the year, how many could you do if you added the third one versus if it's just the 2 of you? Does it go from 4 roads get repaired over the spring, summer, early fall, and now it goes to 8? Or like how does that plan?
Well, trying to
quantify
quantify it, it's going up by a third. So you have a third guy, you get a third more work. We would probably be able to contract out less. Catch basin repairs, we use an outside vendor. We might be able to get into some of those and use them less. So that would be hopefully reducing our budget after a point. Same with just on call. Tomorrow night when it snows, we get 1 to 3 inches. I only need 1 or 2 trucks. I go out, I call Josh, then I start calling vendors. You know what I mean? And that costs, if it's it could go anywhere from $48 for a guy driving one of my trucks an hour to $78 to $85 to hire someone else's truck to come in and do it while we have trucks sitting in our garage.
Okay, that was gonna be my follow-up
You know what I
question.
mean?
You
We-
have three
we have-
plow trucks that you can put people into?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I have 8. You know what I mean? We have plenty of trucks, and I do have contract drivers, but having another guy would take that one less contractor I'd have to call in during a storm. Not that I'm trying to take your work, guys, but you know what I'm saying? It's just it would definitely just right straight through everything. Plowing contracts that we have, we may be able to take back into in-house.
Has there been an analysis of what that cost savings on the contract side would be?
No, I haven't. I haven't been that vigilant. It's I don't have a lot of time to sit back and get into the numbers like that. But I can guarantee you that it would pay for itself. There's no doubt in my mind. Just the amount of work that we get, just maintenance work in the shop, having another guy on the road, just doing other things that we use contractors for.
You had me at plowing.
I'm sorry.
I said you had me at plowing.
I think there's a lot of non-monetary factors. And, Kevin, since he has taken over the road agent position for the last 3-4 years, we have seen it become more and more difficult to get contracted drivers. They're just not there. They don't want to come and sign up for maybe making $8,000 to $10,000 a year if they're lucky, and sign their life away to give up every holiday and this and that when the snow comes. So having full timers on board, they're committed to the agency. They're part of our crew. They're trained. They know their plow routes. They know the operation. Having different contractors coming every single year, operating our equipment for the first time, going down a road for the first time, the inconsistency is, the standard of service the citizens of this town is looking for. It's not there. I'm not saying our private contractors aren't doing a great job, but anytime someone comes in, jumping in a truck that they've never driven before, and they're going down roads they don't know, they're going to forget a street. They're going to hit someone's mailbox. They're going to hit that granite curb that they should have known was there. I don't know how you put a value to that.
All my contractors aren't Litchfield residents. I mean, the majority are from out of town. I get Plastow, Pelham, Hudson. I get them from all over. You know what I mean? So, if I took you and I dropped you in Londonderry and said, "Hey, plow this neighborhood," how many roads would you miss?
Just make sure they can plow the cul-de-sacs correctly.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Brown?
No.
Mr. Hayes?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you for being gentle.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation.
That's because this is round 2 for him. He's tried before.
I don't want a pile of snow at the end of my driveway. We're good.
We started off with used.
So, Troy, if I could just ask you a quick question. Sorry, I was trying to pull up the budget. So things such as the catch basin cleanouts, catch basin replacements that are for $10,000, $15,000 budget items, those types of ones could end up being reduced.
So there's 2 things there. There's the catch basin maintenance, which is when we have to saw cut around a catch basin, remove that pavement, and work the brickwork that's below the ground, reset that steel grate, put the pavement back, and do that. That's maintenance that we contract out today, and it could cost us $3,000.
Right, but that line item could be
that is where if we had
eliminated
a crew of
by
3,
a third person.
we could definitely put a dent in that. There are some catch basins that are tricky, and we still contract out, but a crew of 3, and as they learn to do it, they could do a lot of that work. The cleaning is a different. That's a private piece of equipment that has the vac truck that comes in and.
We have other things that are coming too, like the stormwater management is putting a lot of time. And Troy could talk to that more. It's taking up an extensive amount of time for us. We have to measure all the catch basins depths, have them cleaned, remeasure them, re-inspect them, GPS them, mark them, number them. There's over 900 in town. We did 300 this summer. So it's a time-consuming thing that just started. This is something that's new for us. So it's more time consumption about, I mean, hours.
Yeah, Mr. Hayes, in case you didn't hear that, that was just referring to stormwater management.
And then just one last question as well. So I assume that the line 380 highway contractor services that currently is at 100,000, you could dwindle that down based on having a full timer because some of that is for your contract plowers, right? Okay.
That would be my intent.
Okay.
Next up, Article 5, Human Services and Health Agencies.
All right, so we have a small committee that takes a look on an annual basis of the requests that come in from these different agencies. These agencies, this actual budget item used to be part of your operating budget. I think about 2 years ago it was removed, and now it appears as an annual article. Going through the request, I believe the funding request is the same recommended this year as it was last year.
So this represents fully funding all the requests, correct?
No.
Some of the funds were not, we didn't recommend funding at the level they were requesting.
Like the Greater Nashua Mental Health was for almost 33K.
So what is the total request that we?
So total requests,
Sure, I could click a link somewhere.
Greater
22,
Nashua
60,
Mental Health,
Yeah,
The total
67.
request
Was it 66?
51,584.
All right, so that's how much was requested, and we.
It's being on the warrant for 21,255.
So how did we arrive at that number then? Just carrying.
We go through, so if you keep scrolling, if you go in there, there's a PDF, has all the letters requesting, and they do a really good job providing data as to what they provided for services. Everything seems to be based on the prior year.
Right.
So all these agencies are trying to request money based on services provided in the prior year. We go through that, and some of these agencies that we didn't recommend funding at their requested amount is because they have a formula where they say, hey, we provided $150,000 of service. 100,000 of that we were not able to collect. And so we have some concerns about that, because we know that this could be insurance related. It could be that things are being denied, and it can take a couple of years sometimes. We know with the ambulance fees that we try to collect, when the money's actually come in.
Right.
So that's one example we look at, and then just really trying to prioritize and understanding what we think our community reaches out to, anything food related, the Red Cross, a lot of those health agencies that are providing some services.
No, I appreciate that. I remember when it was like 10 grand. So I wanted to see, like, are we just, did we get to the point where, well, Litchfield's going to fully fund it, so let's put it all in. But it looks like there's actually a process to go through that analyzes it. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay. Other questions on this article?
You have 0 for the women's club still, Troy?
Well, that's going to be, we're going to look at our operating budget this year and see if we can make a contribution to the women's club and the food pantry.
All right. Thank you very much. So we've covered off 4 is the budget, 5, we've covered off 6, we've covered off 7. Article 8.
Okay. So if we could, because your next meeting on the 6th, right? You're going to discuss these and vote on them. And Terry was not able to be here this evening. She had a conflict, and I told her I thought it'd be fine that we could just talk about this one on January the 6th.
Is the committee okay with that? Because typically we discuss it and then vote. We don't discuss it and vote same day.
Can you give us like a high level?
I think she was, probably touched on it when she presented her budget, but what the Board of Selectmen and the town clerk have been discussing is a couple of things. One, in the department, we know that we're concerned about the potential changeover in the staff. And if that were to happen sometime soon, much like with the SRO officer, if it occurs, we're not able. The board's policy right now is they will not create a part-time position without a warrant article. So we'd be in a position where we would almost have to.
Thank you.
We would have to most likely continue the staffing at status quo, which is not what the town clerk is recommending. She'd like to see the full-time clerk, the full-time deputy, and 2 part-time positions. And the part-time positions are going to help with vacation time scheduling during elections, and just overall, the growth in our community with registering cars and the online work. And that's what it's doing. So you basically, a department this size really probably needs 3 full-time positions, but the cost of that with the benefits, I don't think this town could absorb it right now. And the best thing to do is do your 2 part-time. If, again, if the changeover is there.
And
this would allow someone to come on board and get trained and, become part of the team. So
Who abstained from this one? On the budget, on the board.
Richard LaSalle.
Good.
I think what I heard you say is that this position would come in assuming there was a change in current staffing. Is that
It's not tied to that.
Okay.
It's just that we know that there's a couple of things going on in the department. One, they've had growth, demand for services. They've had to change some of their hours, and just overall the way elections happen, the way the online work, is going on. And, but also at the same time, knowing that there could be some changes in existing staff and being prepared to be able to, meet the staffing needs of the department if that ever were to occur.
And that was really my question. If those staffing changes didn't occur, this is
The plan is July 1st. We're, if it's approved, we would bring someone on and start that person, getting them trained. It's going to take 3-4 months, just the training process. And,
okay.
And the needs there, but like I said, when you've got vacations scheduled, to always keep 2 people at that window available to the customers.
So one question I would have is to justify in my mind the need for the position. Do we know how many people are seen on average on a daily basis?
Terry, I can ask Terry to pull that information together for you. And again, a lot of it's, it's amazing how
many transactions are done
no,
in a
she
day?
definitely can
Yeah.
pull that. But it just daily events, even outside the world, you see, it's amazing to watch the different traffic coming in on a daily basis. COVID's been absolutely amazing watching what's happened, elections and just everything.
All right. Anything else on Article 8 before we get more of an update on January 6th? All right. Thank you for high level covering that.
Mm-hmm.
Article 9, fire engine lease, we've covered off. Article 10 is reevaluation expendable trust fund, adding 25 grand to offset the future costs on that. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we talked about this prior. This is a plan for the next 4 years. 1 year is already behind us. So really for the next 3 years, putting aside $25,000 from the unassigned fund balance. And we're hopeful that $100,000 will cover the cost pretty much, give or take, to do the next revaluation of the community.
And then we have Article 11, adding some additional funds into the technology expendable trust fund.
So we're asking to put $12,000 into the fund. This would restore the funding at $50,000, which was the original, when we created the fund, that was the original amount established.
What do we use that fund to cover?
So this fund is,
I meant
pretty
the
broad.
The 12,000. What do we take out of that fund?
Oh, we're taking that from the unassigned fund balance? Is that your question?
You're asking where have we spent 12,000?
Where have we spent $12,000 out of this fund?
John?
I don't know how you would specifically, I don't know how you specifically say you spent 12,000, but he can give you an idea of different things that would come out.
I'm trying to remember.
Why did we hit this account?
Yeah, I think so. It's supposed to be the old gotcha kind of account, obviously. We originally tapped it for a refresh we did a couple years ago when we actually depleted 25 originally. This year we used it to repair the fire alarm system in this building, and that's where that's what it's for. The year before that, I think we had an electrical problem. We blew out 2 $6,000 UPSs. That's where that money came out of. So it's basically something we don't carry a contingency in my budget. And the town doesn't have a contingency in that, so it's meant to bridge that. The other thing that's important about this too is that we just turned on our new communication system. This has also helped to build to fund it if we have problems after our warranty's out, if we go into a maintenance program or not. I mean, there's an accessible cost there, right? A single failure of a radio that can't be repaired is $6,000, right? an MDT in in one of the cruisers, if it dies for whatever reason and it's not under warranty, it can't be repaired, it's $6,000. So it's supposed to deal with all that. 1 year we did use it to help bridge our capital improvement as we transitioned. The stuff we used that money for, we're actually in year 3 this year. So we're in about a year and a half, we'll start looking at refreshing the 5-year cycle again. So it's just, again, I think this was your idea, Carrie, in one respect, to put these funds in place to kind of keep it from hitting the tax base all the time.
Yeah, because it's not a consistent value, right? So
Yeah, and like I said, I'm pretty sure the 12 was the fire panel this past year, and then I think if we had a door system, we had to repair and stuff like that. So.
door out front.
One of the other doors around any other place in the town somewhere. I have to go back in the records to find.
Questions for the IT manager on Article 11? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Article 12, Fire Vehicle and Equipment Repair Trust Fund.
Okay. And so this would be a capital reserve fund that we would use if we had catastrophic failure that, the operating budget couldn't handle the repair costs for the fire department fleet, but also their equipment. They have a lot of expensive equipment as well. So this $25,000 would come from the unassigned fund balance and would bring the capital reserve fund to $75,000.
Why did we choose 75,000 as a goal?
Sitting down with the chief and really talking about not even knowing if the fire engine will pass this year and the age of the whole fleet. And then, of course, all the equipment that they're using now is it's expensive. So as you heard, just one engine pump rebuild can cost 30, but once you open it up and get into this, it can escalate to 50,000 more if possible. So, and that would be one piece of equipment.
Is there a similar expendable trust fund for the police?
Not for police, because they have a really robust replacement program. They're at least, they're purchasing, they're not least purchasing, but they're purchasing new vehicles about every 3 years. So they're refreshing the fleet every 3 years. I mean, the maintenance that I see is tires, brakes, batteries, windshield wiper blades.
Okay. Questions on Article 12? Hearing none, we'll shift gears into Article 13, Public Works Expendable Trust Fund.
Public Works Expendable Trust Fund is not only, when you hear the word Public Works, you're thinking probably just the highway, but when this fund was created, originally, the intent was to cover any over expenditures in the solid waste department. So if they exceeded a certain dollar amount for solid waste and construction debris, because every year trying to put together the budget, you never knew really where you're going to come in. And on the same side, in the highway department, the language that was adopted was specifically to cover the cost of road salt, contractors that we hire. So if you had a really bad winter and you just blow your budget, this was a fund that we could turn to continue to pay our contractors and purchase sand and salt. And then it was amended to allow for repair and replacement of highway equipment. So this funding right here would bring the fund up to $100,000. And I'll be honest with you, we know that even though we've been able to purchase some new plow truck equipment, but we still have a lot of old equipment. If you saw the warrant articles, or if you take a look at this capital improvement plan, the highway department itself probably had 4 vehicles that were scheduled to be either replaced last year or this year. We got backhoes, we got more plow trucks. Knowing everything that's going on with the fire engine, the tax cap, we thought that if we could increase the fund balance here, that would protect us as the fleet continues to age. But secondly, we're very interested in keeping our eyes open and maybe working with some of the communities on trying to acquire some used plow trucks, because the town of Londonderry, the town of Wyndham, the town of Bedford, or even over in Amherst, we're aware that they, much like the police department here, they've been able to establish a pretty good replacement program where they're lease purchasing these brand new plow trucks and trading them in at the exact time when when they've got the best life expectancy out of that truck. So they're turning them in at about 8 years. If we could get our hands on a couple of these municipal trucks that you can talk with them and get, a truck that's been well maintained for what we're doing, which is just plowing. We're not using these trucks year round. We much like the used trucks we have now, we're hopeful that we can run them for, what do you think, Kevin?
10, 15 easy.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we did. The two big trucks that we have right now were state used trucks. We got them at state auction. And yeah, they break down. They cost a lot of money, but one no longer is in service, but they did what they were supposed to do. And like I said, we don't use them other than for plowing snow. We're not transporting our own sand and gravel all summer and doing other stuff that the other departments do.
Yeah. Questions on Article 13?
All right. Moving into the conservation fund cap.
So this one's straightforward. Back in 2014, the community voted to place a $1 million cap on the conservation fund. Conservation fund is a fund that is.
I apologize. This isn't a budget
It
impact.
receives land use change taxes, right? So 80% of the land use change tax that's collected goes into the conservation fund. The citizen said that if that fund hits $1 million, everything should be held in escrow in a side account until the next town meeting. If it's repurposed for something, then fair enough. If no action is taken, then it goes to the unassigned fund balance. So the Conservation Commission would like to see this cap increase from $1 million to $2.5 million.
Thank you. I realized afterwards that didn't have budget impact. Article 15.
Okay. So because we exceeded the $1 million cap, we had about $35,000 that's been held in escrow. Conservation Commission and Selectmen have talked about what do we want to do with that money. And the Conservation Commission came back with a recommendation. Why don't we take it and put it into the Farmland Capital Reserve Fund? That has already got it was established. I don't know, we have a date there, but it was established many years ago. Has a balance of about $125,000. So we think that it might be good to be put in there. And I'll tell you, really, the strategy behind it is that if there's a large land purchase one day, that if the town is looking for federal or state grant funding, and we can demonstrate that we're coming forward with funding sources, from two different funds, it helps our grant application become more competitive when you're up against, the town of Londonderry and Amherst and Hollis.
It looks better even.
If
that
you can
rather
show,
than coming
if you
from
can
all
put
one-
together a grant application and you're trying to acquire a $2.5 million agricultural, land that's prime in the southern New Hampshire, and you could say, we have the Conservation Commission that's willing to give X amount. The Board of Selectmen are willing to release so much from the Farmland Capital Reserve Fund. And, we'd like to have the state kick in $1 million or whatever. I mean, it's competitive.
All right, so it's not managed by Conservation Commission. It's managed.
So
by,
the Farmland Capital Reserve Fund is under the Board of Selectmen.
Selectmen or
They're-
agents.
They're agents to expend.
All right, so yes, okay, so you'd actually would technically have two different groups. It's not. I originally thought they were both conservation funds with two different names.
Yeah.
But okay, two different. Okay.
That concludes the town warrant articles this evening. Any final questions for Administrator Brown?
So in advance of January 6th, we'll resolve that $600 discrepancy that we talked about earlier. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So is there, I went back and I put the budget back to what it was on 2021. So if you look at now the summary page, it's back to October 2021.
Okay.
And is that the number that you had?
I'll have to go back and look.
We'll do it offline.
Yeah, let me do it
and then,
offline.
You know, and that way you can discuss and vote on changes if you might
I think
on the
it's a
operating
dollar
budget.
off.
Dollar.
We're always a
We hope.
dollar or somewhere in that range off.
It's because you use round numbers and the budget doesn't.
We'll find it.
Round, comma, 0.
All right. Any other questions? So for January 6th on the town side and the school side, we'll be final voting on the warrant articles and the final numbers, which will be presented at the budget hearing the following Thursday. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll shift gears on to the schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That one's my birthday.
That was your birthday?
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Troy.
All right. Thank you.
They presented it last week at high level to us.
We'll have a glass of wine. You're an adult.
He got fruit for his birthday cake from us today.
You got what?
Fruit.
Fruit?
Yeah.
Oh,
Instead of cake, we had
instead of
fruit.
cake? Are you on a diet?
They're trying to help me.
I'm trying to help you.
We'll see you. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A birthday without cake is not a birthday.
Agreed.
Of course, now we've got to find the school warrant articles.
Andrew, I just
shared my board report with you from last night, so you can have the December financials.
Oh, fantastic. Let me flip that over to the committee now.
Thanks for doing that, Corey. My computer died, so.
I just thought of it. I wasn't sure.
For those connected to the internet, I'll forward you an email now. Sent.
Are we on an extremely drafty or are we?
No, we have a draft, but what I don't know is how to get it up there for presentation.
The warrant articles?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll bring it up there. Just give me just a moment. Is it the same file that you shared for last week?
No.
Okay. Can you share the link with me?
It's no longer
Yep.
extremely drafty.
I have to share 2 links with you, and then I'll just tell you where to click to scroll
Perfect.
through it. So.
Yep.
It says you need access. Did you open it?
I tried. I just requested access.
The BA report, the committee doesn't have access.
Yeah, I just looked this shit.
You get a bunch of requests, bro.
Request sent. Okay.
Look at that. I have access.
Not too special.
You need a charger.
Everyone wants to see it.
Did your computer die?
That's okay.
Yep.
It did, but yeah,
Another one.
Mine working, but I
I'll be
got
all right.
full battery.
I can squint and see it up there.
Do you want me to click it
I prefer the PDF.
We went over them last
Getting
night, so
through
they're
it.
fresh in my
You got 'em?
memory.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just waiting for the email to come through.
Did you send one?
I did.
Yeah, I'm used to
We
just
didn't
walking
take a
in and
vote.
Do you want me to
connecting.
send it? Is it easier that way?
Operates differently.
Yeah.
Just send it again, so you have 7 extra.
Just
Yeah, I think we're gonna, like, I'll say something at the
Second
budget
time you
hearing
opened.
and I deliberate that we're in favor of it. Brian is gonna do the town deliberative. He's gonna sit in for me for the town session. Making my mom's lifetime wish come true for Christmas. New York
Someone
City.
needs access. Okay.
Give it everybody.
So he'll do either for the school part, but he's gonna do.
So there's 2 links. If you would open the warrant, that would be
Sure.
the first one to go through.
I don't have anything received yet.
It's going through the scrubber.
Spam filters.
Please have a budget.
Still got nothing.
These are nice.
Oh, here's one. All right, perfect. And sorry, the warrant.
Please.
Okay, fantastic. And allow me to share my screen. Share. We should be in business.
You must be the anonymous jackalope.
The who?
The anonymous jackalope. So this is the draft warrant that we brought to the school board last night. They have not yet voted on it, but it's way more refined than the extremely drafty one that you had last time. And we are zeroing in. I can tell you that there are numbers that we're getting. I mean, we had a very important meeting on Monday where we received some numbers, and now we're able to put some dollars and cents to things.
And then an 11th hour meeting yesterday afternoon.
He sent it to me
review,
directly.
The elementary project and some design specifications to it that
That's
will
budget,
actually,
that's it.
the number that's on here, we anticipate as the design drawings come in right before Christmas.
Let me do it for my phone because I'm
It's
presenting.
going to reduce the total amount of the project.
So Article 1 is the budget, and the number that's in here, the $23,916,634, is the number that we have from the Budget Committee to date. You will also notice that the default budget that the school board has set and calculated, although they have not voted on that yet, is slightly higher at $24,221,483. If the Budget Committee does not take any further reductions, and that's the number that remains on the warrant, then this will result in a reduction of 29 cents per thousand. So again, we feel the board's done a really good job working with the administrative team to bring forward a budget. I know you cut it a little bit further, $14,000, which didn't have too much of an impact on that dollar amount, but it still is a reduction. For reference, last year's budget was up 60 cents, right? So the budget that we brought forward was projected to have an increase of 60 cents. This year, we're coming in with a reduction of 29 cents.
And that's based on revenue projection. That's not what we've received from the state at this point. There's a bit of a change in the calculation, so we are anticipating additional funds from the state in our adequacy.
Is that anticipated to be a permanent change, or is it like a temporary?
They go round and round every
Biennium,
on this
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I get worried that, well, we did great this year. Boom, dollar next year. All right.
That's kind of the nature of legislative elections at this point. I mean, they're just kind of on a roller coaster, and they're tweaking and adjusting formulas as we go. So, anything else on Article 1?
No.
Okay, if we scroll down to Article 2, Article 2 is the collective bargaining agreement. This was ratified by the association on Monday, ratified by the school board last night. So we're able to assign numbers to it. It's a 2-year agreement, and the first year cost is $351,187. And then we're notifying the public that a second year cost of this would be about the same at $364,665. Of course, we have to raise and appropriate the first year cost. So we do that here, and we're estimating that the first year cost will be a 29-cent increase. So the reduction that's been taken will be offset by the first warrant article, and we're back to zero impact in some cumulative total way as you work your way through this.
So what are the changed or approved terms of this new contract?
I don't have that summary.
Okay. Will we be receiving a copy of it?
We'll have that for the public.
So for the meeting. So
For the meeting.
So traditionally, I mean, you're going to want us to vote on this.
Yep.
How do I vote on it if I don't know what the terms are?
Good point. Remember, it was just ratified last night, so I don't have that prepared for you tonight. But we'll get you something.
Yeah, if you could send a summary over the next week or so the committee has a chance to take a look at it before we vote on January 6th, that'd be great.
Excellent.
We can work with Holly to get that done.
Sorry?
We can work with Holly to get that done.
Thank you. What happens if this fails?
So then Article 3, the board at this point has left on the warrant article that asks the public if Article 2 were to fail, will the public authorize us to call a special meeting. So remember, the law has been changed. We cannot go to court or have any other relief. If it were to fail, we would be frozen static for a year. And so this is the only mechanism that would allow us to actually call a special meeting. So we put this article on there for the voters to let us know if that's something that they will authorize us to do.
Does that go against the new law? Is this legal?
This is the only recourse in the law.
Okay.
There were two recourses before. You could have asked the public this, which my understanding is historically it had not been a practice, or you could petition court.
Okay.
They've taken the court petition out, so that's no longer an option. So now the only recourse is this.
Okay.
And then the other, to answer the rest of the question, if 2 fails and 3 is a no, that means we're at status quo. There will be no raises issued. That dollar amount does not get generated, and everybody stays flat. I'll editorialize. That'll be really bad. We're having trouble hiring staff now, and it's not going to help us if we cannot give the raises that are in there. So that would be very difficult.
Okay, thank you. Article 4.
Article 4 is the support staff agreement. You saw these numbers last time because this agreement was settled in record time. We had an agreement with our support staff before school even opened. Negotiated over the summer and had an agreement in place by the end of August. It is a 3-year agreement. That's important to us because we want to get back to staggering the agreements. Negotiating 2 agreements is a challenge. And so this way we'll have if everything passes, a 2-year agreement and a 3-year agreement, so we can be on a staggered position with the 2 associations. You can see that the 3-year costs are roughly about the same, and we have to raise and appropriate $99,433 for the first year costs of the agreement, and that carries a tax impact of 8 cents per thousand.
I know a lot can change, but can we consider a 5-year agreement?
Can, yes, but remember it takes 2 parties to agree to that. And so, typically these are 1, 2, or 3-year agreements. You occasionally see a 4. Personally, I've never seen a 5, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't be asked. I think the further out you get, the more uncertain people are of what the future could bring.
Sure.
So,
yeah, I'm just thinking of a way to, reduce the burden by both parties to go through this process.
4 years,
Thank you.
then you can have an off year in between each 2.
Yeah.
Same question as before. Is there a summary available for the change in contract terms?
I don't have it tonight, but we will get you a summary.
Thank you.
All right, questions on Article 4? All right, Article 5.
Article 5 is the what if Article 4 fails. This is asking the public for the one-time opportunity to call a special meeting. At this point, the board has left it on, and I would anticipate, because there really wasn't a lot of talk about not adding this, so I would expect that you would see 3 and 5 on there, just so the public can weigh in.
I'm sticker shock by Article 6. Okay.
So are we.
Well,
I jumped ahead. So
no.
Very understandable.
So let me just tell you, so are we.
Yeah.
But we want to talk our way through it, and we want to have the committee understand, because I still think that I think there's a couple of things. I'm not sure the numbers are solid, so I think you're going to see some reduced numbers as we work our way through this. You have to understand what this is doing, and that is a complete renovation of the heating and ventilation system in that school. In addition to insulating the building fully and properly, it will add 2 classrooms, because the locker rooms are just wasted space in the school. Middle schoolers are not taking showers these days. It's all wasted space in there. Our goal is to renovate that space out and to create smaller locker rooms and to create classrooms out of that space. So
Specifically for special ed, it would be special ed space.
Because that building is incredibly cramped for special needs space right now. So
just for the public who might be following, because we haven't read it, right? But this is Article 6, renovating LMS, our middle school, and the draft number at this point in time is $6.8 million over a 20-year municipal lease.
Yep. If you would go to the other document I shared with you, the assumption sheet, I'm going to walk you through how we got to where we are.
Give me just a moment. I'll bring that back up.
You have to request access.
And I would ask you to, at the bottom, go to the LMS project sheet, the first one. Perfect. So our team that's been doing the design work with us, sent out the pricing sheets for the project. And North Branch, who is the general contractor that we've hired for the project, they sent it out to their subs. And it came back with a project amount of $6.1 million. I'm just going to round because that's easier to do.
Please.
That shocked us. That is not what we were anticipating or expecting. What we're being told is that basically it's back to the supply chain issue. It's back to the labor shortage issue. It's back to the fact that every school in America got ESSER funds for ventilation projects, and every school in America is in the middle of planning something to do with those ESSER funds. And so, the ESSER funds need to be used or lost, and that is partly driving this. They felt that they did not get the level of participation from the subs that they would have expected. They believe that when they go out with final pricing sheets, that more people will jump on board. But all the companies are scrambling at this time. And so the question was, what could they pull together and put in for bids to get prices on this? Okay. The second thing that's important in this is that's just the renovation work. The solar array and the energy storage system is another 1.3 million roughly. So the overall project is coming in at 7.3 million. Now, I know it sounds like a lot, but keep in mind, we've done the windows, we've done the roof. All of those were zero cost to taxpayer in terms of additional funds. We've renovated the front office area, created the new conference room area, updated the teacher's room. I mean, there's a lot of work that we've already done using other rounds of ESSER funding or existing funds that we had available to us. So when we saw this price, I asked North Branch, I said, all right, tell us about some of the possible carve outs, because I'm going to be asked this. That's a high number. I'm going to be asked, well, what if we didn't do, and then fill in the blank. So I said, here are the three, what if we don't do? The first is, what if we don't do the foundation insulation work? So first, what is the foundation insulation work? The slab of the middle school, just drive by and take a look. You can see it. It's just staring at you. It's sitting there. It's also sitting there with 20-degree air on a cold day, and it's wicking the heat right out of the slab. There's zero insulation on it. That slab just goes underneath the building, and the closer you get to the wall, where the exterior wall, the colder the floor is because the heat's being wicked away. Okay. What this project will do, and we've done it in two classrooms, one on the north side, one on the south side. We put insulation up against it. We've excavated down. We brought insulation out and kind of encapsulated the earth. We've earth massed to keep the heat contained within that area. And we're taking measurements this winter. We haven't been able to collect measurements because it just hasn't been cold enough to see the impact of this. But we did two classrooms because we believe we're going to be able to show that that's going to result in energy savings for us. And anything we can do to reduce the load on that building is going to help to reduce the size of the solar field that we need to build on the roof. So we believe that the $105,000 to get that slab properly insulated is well worth it. Okay, so that's one carve out that I had asked about. Now, if we don't do it, the overall project is $7,289,000. So you just deduct the 105 out. That's there for you.
I'm missing something.
Yep, go ahead.
Apologies. The warrant article as
getting
written right now is 6.8, but now we're being presented 7.4.
Getting there. Bear with me.
Okay. All right.
It's going
You're
down.
going to say
You're going up.
You're going to say excellent presentation in the end. So bear with me. Right? Commercial kitchen cooler dumpster area. So the kitchen is 40 years old. The equipment is outdated. The cooler is smack dab in the middle of the kitchen. It's shrunk the size of the kitchen. It restricts the ability to work in that kitchen. So this project will put a new energy efficient cooler outside of the kitchen on a new slab just outside the kitchen door. It will also create an enclosure for the dumpster area so that the first thing parents and visitors see right now is the dumpster as you go around the building. That'll be enclosed, tidied up, and neatened so that it'll just increase the appearance of the school. That's a $375,000 project. And if you go to the capital improvement plan that was approved, you will see $300,000 for that in there. So we did a pretty decent job of estimating what we thought that was going to cost. And that is on the warrant, or on the capital improvement plan to be on the warrant this year. It's in this project, but it is there, and this is consistent with what was there. The last thing is the locker room renovation or the creation of the 2 classrooms. That's $500,000. Again, it's wasted space. We feel that it's much better to spend that money and to capture that space permanently for classrooms and use that going forward. So if we took all of those deductions, it's a $980,000 cost. You can see what it would end up being. Our recommendation to the board is not to do those, not to take those as deductions, but in fact, leave them as part of the project. So if you work down a little further, you will see that the funding on hand, the ESSER 3 funding, of which we can use 80% for ventilation, 20% has to be used for closing learning gaps. That's $538,000. And we have an intent to ask the select board to release the impact fees at the middle school that have been collected, $44,378. That hasn't been released yet. But if both of those items occur, with everything else being left in, then we end up at $6.8 million. I did round off the 11,000, but that's how I got to the 6.8. So let me pause there and see if you have questions on that.
I do. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Loved it.
Thank you.
You got down to the 6.9. I'm like, I don't get it. All right.
All right.
That's cool.
So now if you go to the funding sheet for a second, I'm just showing here, these are all the funding mechanisms that we have studied. And I put in red the ESSER 3 funding and the LMS impact fee money. Okay, so that's how we came up with those dollar amounts to earmark toward this project, assuming the board approves all of that. And here's where I wanted to pause. The board does have discretion to utilize some of the other funds that are on this page. I haven't taken action on that. We have not advised that, but there are other possibilities. If we really feel that this is something that is undoable, there could be some other funds here that get tapped in.
Another question.
Yep.
With the significant price tag and the presentation a moment ago about supply chain issues driving up costs, about demand driving up costs from other school districts, why now? Why not wait until we are able to roll this into a much larger bond for a much larger scope of a project and get economies of scale?
Well, so a much larger bond is the elementary school.
Yeah.
And that's a $30 million project.
Maybe. I don't know.
We think. So we're just adding on, 6 point, or whatever the number ends up being. So that would be added on to that. And that's just growing it incrementally in a way that
feels you're not able to
So,
do either one.
and then
Yeah.
there's also the factor too, where we're already engaged with a construction manager. If you defer something a year, they're not just going to sit and wait.
Yeah, I get it.
You'd have to go out to bid again, and now you have
Here's
restate.
the practical problem I see with this, and correct me if I'm off my soapbox. There's no way this is getting passed.
If I were, a
There's no way.
contractor-
Can I finish the presentation?
You opened it up to questions, so I'm asking a question.
Oh, I'm just sorry. That's not a question. That's a judgment.
Well, but it's a reality, right?
But
You had a problem at 3 million.
Hey, let me finish walking you through it because I think there is a compelling argument to come, and it's in the long-term energy savings for the town. And it's the fact that we will not be subjected to spiking fossil fuel costs in the future, and we will not be subjected to energy cost shifts in the future.
Is that this MLP tab?
You can see that, no, back on the funding tab, there were two funding sources that we had originally had coming off the top of the project, those were due to the New Hampshire Saves rebates that would be available to the school district. But when the Public Utilities Commission cut the New Hampshire Saves program, we lost $285,000 in funding for LMS plus another 69 for CHS Energy project. So, that's in litigation. Groups are suing. There's all sorts of stuff going on that. So I don't want to call it lost funding yet because it may be restored. And any of those rebates are going to go right off that price tag. So you could take the 6.8 and reduce it by these rebates if they come in. So that's just another, okay, that's happened in the last month, but we were counting on some of those toward that bottom line. So now let's go to the MLP estimates tab. And in red, what we're providing here were 3 estimates. And I can assure you, if you look, this is column F. That's because column A, B, C, and D are estimating 3.5, 4, 4.5 million, because that's more like where we thought this was going to be. But then we had to update the sheet when we got the actual estimates that came in. The 2% rate is what we're being told to plan for. We're also being told that there are, the feds are suggesting 3 interest hikes in the next year. And so there's a cost to waiting also in terms of more expensive to borrow money. 2% is pretty cheap money. I don't know exactly what the hikes are that they have on the horizon. We're hearing you could go up a full percent. So that's just going to cost more down the road. And that's
Unless we see a 10% drop in materials. I mean, that's the game you're playing. Like, is the drop in material cost going to exceed the cost and the increase of the spending, the rate? I would venture a guess it would.
So why is that in red? Because we're looking at, in order to finance 6.5 to 7 million, which is the ballpark that we're in, you're looking at about a $400,000 annual payment on the money that you borrow. Last sheet, cost avoidance. So at the end of the project, there are energy savings at LMS of about $60,000 a year that is already in our operating budget. There are electrical savings at Campbell of about $40,000 from the lighting project that we're engaged in now. Again, that lighting project is being completed without any additional tax revenue, or any tax revenue actually. And then there are oil savings at LMS when you've taken the fossil fuels directly out of the building of about $45,000 a year. And they've been on a roller coaster as the price of oil has been on a roller coaster. So we're projecting that in our operating budget, we will avoid paying utilities $145,000. Our consultant has said it's closer to 190, but I feel better about 145 at this point. So you take the $400,000 annual payment, you deduct out the 145 that is already in the operating budget, and it leaves you having to generate new funds of $255 a year.
For year one.
For year one of the municipal lease. So going back to the warrant, that's why it's structured as a $6.8 million ask for a 20-year note for raise and appropriate 255 to pay back that first year with the other 145 coming out of the operating budget that you've already approved in cost avoidance. And now I've explained it all. I don't think I'm going to get a great presentation.
So I'll turn it over to the committee.
So 255 times 20 is 5.1. So you're saying we've already.
That's for year one, because those are the items we can account for in the 23 budget.
Okay. So what do we expect that the cost would be on an annual basis after year one?
The 400 payment.
So from year 2 on, you're gonna ask for 400,000.
No, they won't have to ask. It'll be in the
It'll be in
budget.
the budget.
But that's not listed in this warrant article.
But we did.
You have to put all the information in there. I would say that number one. Number two, with this price tag, it's got to be a bond. it absolutely needs to be a bond.
I agree with you. I actually won't
I
vote
don't
for a
think-
lease. I'll vote for a bond. I would consider a bond, but I won't do a lease.
If I don't want to go back to his tab, but to me, you presented those three potential breakouts: the slab, the kitchen, and the locker rooms. I see value in the slab work for 100K because I think we can see direct benefit from that with a cost savings. I think you have the opportunity to pull almost $1 million on this price tag with those other two items that I've said on school facilities. I see the value in them, but I think at this price tag, it's about priorities.
I'll just say, and as I prefaced at the beginning, there was an 11th hour meeting. We left this as we drafted it. There was a meeting yesterday afternoon that I was called into to review some of the mechanical work and the equipment that's going in and particular needs of the building, and is the system sized appropriately for what's going on. Based on what we're talking about, the system that has been designed initially is oversized. It takes into account heating and cooling for the entire year. We don't use the building the entire year. We don't need cooling the entire year. So that changes the size of the equipment that you need, which will have a deduction on the price tag. So we're still, before we start picking things out and saying that maybe it's not necessary, I want to wait and see what those deductions will look like when the construction drawings come in next week, which they'll get full bids. Once they have a construction set, he's guessing he's going to get more participation on an actual set than he did on just the schematic design. So there's going to be an adjustment in this amount.
I like his idea about the wrap. I think that's a very good idea. My other question is, are you getting more than one bid as a general contractor on this, or have you already said this guy's doing it?
We hired North Branch last April, and they're on for the entire project.
You need bids. You got to have competitive.
Yes, he is bidding.
He bids the subcontractors.
Yeah,
He's just the construction.
Yes, I get that. And then he beats up the subs, and that's his profit. I get that. But you need to have more than one general contractor bid on this, because you might get a big difference. They might be a lot higher, but they might be a lot lower. That's how the construction industry works.
And we interviewed 4.
You interviewed
for this project.
Did they give you numbers? Did all 4 of them give you numbers?
We engaged with North Branch.
But did they all give you numbers?
The four contractors.
It was an RFQ we did. We didn't do a bid.
Okay.
We hired them as a construction manager. So they did for that job, but they did not give us numbers for this.
But you should have got numbers from everybody, and then you could have gone through the numbers. You could have compared apples to apples and oranges to oranges, because by giving it to one person, he doesn't have to be competitive.
No,
He gives you a number, and that's the number.
they should have engaged 2 separate services, pre-construction and then construction. And we've done that. My company had done that. They did pre-construction, developed the bids, and then bid again for the project. My question is, we went to them with 3 ideas. Did you ask them for their value engineering ideas? Having built these kind of buildings, do they have any suggestions as to where we could make reductions without impacting the overall project?
So we took the meeting Monday to understand the numbers that we were being given. We have not done the value engineering yet.
Right. I mean, I would encourage you to not necessarily go in with your ideas. They're the experts. Have them come with their ideas.
Oh, it's the consultants, sir.
Well,
we have an owner's rep that is.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I must have misunderstood, but it said we went with 3 ideas. Like, they're going to have more than that. They're going to have an idea of, don't focus on the foundation, focus on changing certain lighting, certain other things that'll have a bigger impact that may not affect the overall outcome, but they would know better.
Yeah, that's exactly the stage that we're in at this point, right? So we've asked that. I just specifically said I want to know about those 3.
Right.
So here I've got this sheet. I've got a concrete price. I said, how much of that concrete is relative to the cooling? So break it out for me. How much, because they've got the balance of how those numbers were derived at. So that's why I asked for those 3 potential carve outs.
I have a question on the funding tab. So the 6.8 million that's being asked for, am I reading it correct that the school building maintenance capital reserve fund would be depleted to zero?
No.
No?
So
Okay.
so let's talk about that. The 289,000 that's in
Yep.
there, that's our rainy day fund. That's if the roof gets blown off one of the buildings and we need to replace it, or a boiler blows up and we need to replace it, when the road washed out at GMS and we needed to put a new culvert in, when the electrical server or electrical switch at GMS went, right? So we're not proposing to touch that because we really see that as more of the rainy day fund. Now, it's possible the board could say, you know what, we could lower that amount by dipping a little bit into that number, but that has not been determined. So that would remain at the 289.
So why is it in the funding tab? Is that just so that way the board can take a look at it and
Correct, yeah.
choose if they wish to? But as far as these numbers here, as far as impact fees, the NH saves, capital improvement, none of that is touched. That's just there for their benefit to make a decision.
That's correct.
If they want to.
The ones in red are the only ones that are currently proposed to offset the cost.
That's correct. And, you know, if New Hampshire Saves gets restored, we'll deduct those numbers off because that's a direct rebate that'll come off the project, right? So that's easy to do in. But we didn't want to lose track of it here because we actually had that on there to deduct until the freeze occurred or whatever. So the LMS roof project, SO2 funds went to the LMS roof project. That's how we're getting a new roof without impacting the taxes because the funds came from the feds.
So has anything been added into this besides what was presented to the capital improvement committee a few years ago?
We've
Or is it
come a
the same?
long way since then.
So, because it was originally planned at 1.3 million plus 300,000 for the
And that was
kitchen.
that was all information based on the H.L. Turner report, which was basically a shot in the dark. Like there were no bids, there were no designs. It was just a report with numbers. This is what we're seeing at this time, but there was no actual bids, or we have no idea what any of those things would have actually cost. So that's the HVAC and that's the HVAC mechanical that was included in the H.L. Turner report.
So this is more than.
That's where we got that.
Yeah, and the capital improvement, it shows 3 years progressing 1.3, 1.4, 1.6 for LMS renovation, so there's 4 million in capital improvement.
That's not what's on here.
No, the recommendation at the end of that was to bond 4 million, do all 3 schools. Should have done that then.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But look what's happening.
I was just saying, it's not, it wasn't based on any design work. We still would have had to bid it. Those numbers could have been very, very wrong.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
Well, I know we have some additional questions here. We also have another article.
Yep. go ahead.
And I'm watching the clock.
Oh, that's good.
During 9:30 stop. Okay to proceed to the next one?
Yeah.
While we still have time?
And if I just may, so you're reacting exactly the way I reacted, exactly the way Corey reacted,
exactly the way our consultants reacted.
Everybody
Exactly
had
how
the
the
same
board
reaction.
reacted.
But here's the piece, and I think this is really important. And I don't have the chart to share with you tonight. But if you look at doing nothing, which has been the way we've been operating, we haven't done anything. This is why our buildings are in disrepair. Okay. Our COVID numbers at the middle school are through the roof. We have double the number of cases as we do in any other school. Do you think it's related to the ventilation system that isn't operating correctly? And so we have to get after this. We have to address these things. I'm down there today and you're sweating in one part of the building and freezing in another part of the building, and it's a hot day. And so it's time that we take care of our buildings and we don't end up driving the middle school into another GMS scenario. So we have got to take it, and at the end of this, that building will be done. The roof will be done, the windows are done, the envelope is buttoned up, the ventilation is updated to current standards and code, and it will last for 40 years. And there is a price tag to do that work. And this is that price tag using current dollars. And we have work to do on whether that ends up being the final price. But to do nothing, to keep buying oil, keep paying for electrical rates, which by the way are going up. The electrical rates are going up. just to do nothing means that we're going to spend about $10 million over the next 40 years. If we do this, we're going to spend about $1 million over the next 40 years, plus the work investment that we make. It will ultimately save money for the taxpayers, and it'll provide the building and the educational environment that is necessary for today's students. I'll get back to you with charts. I'll get back to you with numbers, but we're looking at a 90% reduction in energy costs. No more fluctuation. Drive by the gas tank and the price of oil is going up, and you just don't have to worry about it once we've made this conversion over. So, and the building is solidified in
My only request,
Mhm.
I'm not presenting this at budget hearing.
Well, honestly,
You don't have to.
We do the warrant.
You don't have to.
I,
You will.
I would encourage the school board to seriously consider or reconsider the lease versus the bond.
Be shot.
I think you will be better received in town if you go as a bond. I think if you go as a lease and it squeaks by, you're only making your pitch for GMS even harder. I think if you want to have a good community approach and reception from this, the lease purchase is not the way to go.
I wouldn't disagree with that, thinking about the impact that this could have to a new elementary school. I was thinking along similar lines.
I mean, because we bonded 3.6 for a fire station, and we bonded it. I mean, we didn't do a lease purchase, we bonded it. So you really need to do that if you want to be received at all for not only this, but down the road. I mean, you could be digging a really deep hole. Just be careful.
We would not, just to be clear,
I was actually going to ask Mr. Chairman if we could move to Article 7.
Oh, I thought you said making fun joke about the
No,
digging a deep
no,
hole.
just with the fact that we have 10 minutes left.
just in terms of the elementary school project, that would be a bond. We're not talking about a municipal lease for a project. You can't do it. The laws in New Hampshire won't allow it. They do allow it for equipment such as this and the type of upgrade that we're proposing, but they don't allow it for a building. Article 7. So there are basically two options that are provided here. The board has not picked between the menu, but option 1 is to put $125,000 into the I can't read that.
Capital Improvement Expendable Trust.
Exactly. And to do it out of this year's fund balance. So if we have $125,000 left at the end of the year, we would then deposit it into the capital improvement fund. Reminder to the budget committee, we've done this twice. We did $70,000 the first year. We did $100,000 last year. We want to increase it to $125,000.
And really the purpose of the improvement expendable trust fund at this point is to get the design drawings done for a new elementary school. So currently there's $820,000 in there. We're waiting on, we have some preliminary estimates from the architect group to determine how much that full set's going to cost. We're going to deplete a big chunk of that expendable trust fund on the design work.
We also feel it's important to have a warrant article related to the project because that project is projected to come forward next year. The voters have twice weighed in by saying, go ahead, go ahead. We're looking for a go ahead here. And so one way to do that is from the unassigned fund balance. The other option is a straight ask, which would have a 10-cent impact on the warrant. Overall, if you add it up, down 29, up 29, up 8, up 21, you're at 29. And then if you do up 10, you're at 39. You're still significantly below the up 68 that we asked for last year. So I know it's a big gulp on number 7, but in the grand scheme of budgets that we bring forward, the overall ask on here is not as high as it's been in the past and as high as been supported by the voters. And if we go with option 1, it's only up to 29. So it's even half of what we had approved, less than half of what we had approved last year.
Last year, the estimate was 60. We came in on an operating budget that was approved at 60. We came in at -2.
Right. My main concern, honestly, is that it's revenue driven. If those revenues change at all, taxes go up a lot.
State sets it. The state sets those.
No,
and I
but we
can't
can control
what they do.
expenses. We can control the spending side,
Mm-hmm.
so that if there are changes on the revenue side, then we're not hurt as much. That's all. My concern is we're really depending that, and that's hurt us in the past. You know, the pension funds, 35%. The state promises, well, they don't fund it anymore. So relying so heavily on state funding, federal funding. I tell people to vote for it if you're willing to pay the full freight, because you can't plan that the revenue is going to be there. So if people are comfortable with, if all things fail, this is what we're responsible for, then have at it. But we need to understand that we are dependent on somebody else's decision.
Before we leave Article 7, my opinion on these, and I know this, it sounds like the school board is going to select an option prior to January 6th. For what it's worth, I like option 1. I think that.
Yeah, I like option 2 because
I like
then it's
option
very
2 as
clear. Because option 1, I'd vote for, sure, maybe, because that opens up so many options. Well, option 2 gives people who say, you know what? I don't know that we need a new elementary school. Then they can just vote no. We've never actually asked the question, do people want a new elementary school? This would make it very clear.
Oh, we have asked it the last the 2 years prior. Though.
If you read them, they're not saying they say we're explore options for how the district wants to move forward, with the understanding of many that it's going to be, but it could also be a variety of other options. So this option 2 is very clear. There is no mistake. If this passes, people want a new elementary school. If it fails, we're done.
If you go with option 2 and option 2 fails, do you have the opportunity to still do option 1 for your capital improvements?
I
Or
think
no
we need
means
to
no?
let the school
Transfer
board
to the
decide,
trust fund has to be
right?
approved.
And then we can talk about it on January 6th.
So that does require a warrant article.
But what we do have is the capital improvement plan that clearly states that a new elementary school is the number 1 priority of the capital improvement plan. So.
But again, that's created by a group of people and not necessarily the people who pay for it. So let's ask the people who pay the taxes, do you want us to go this route?
I think we'll close the discussion because I think we just need to wait until the school board votes.
Absolutely.
All right,
But that,
and
I'm just,
go from there. Right? There's no decisions to be made as of yet.
that's true.
All right, and 5 minutes remaining. Anything else on the school side this evening?
Just 2 things I want to raise with the budget committee. So on the town warrant, just a couple of points. First of all, the police SRO position. I want to speak in favor of that. The full school board supported that last night. I arrived here at 7:00, as you were saying, the pledge, because I had to send an alert out to the community about the threats that are going around on the internet. It's real, folks, and we don't think there's any credible threat in New Hampshire or Litchfield, but I had made the decision earlier with the chief after consulting with him not to send anything out because I don't want to heighten anxiety. People's anxiety levels are off the chart. And then you send a notice and say, well, it's a threat, but we don't think it's anything to be concerned about. And people just get heightened anxiety. So I didn't want to add to that. But every other school district sends something. So all of a sudden it's like, well, why isn't Litchfield sending anything? We're going to. So we send a message, right? Let it craft and send that. I think an SRO is just one more tool in our belt that signals the importance of one of our most valuable assets, our children, in our school buildings. We take them and collect them all across town and bring them to our buildings, and we have a sincere obligation to protect their safety. And the SRO program is critical. So we've got a great chief. He's on the right track. He and I completely agree. We don't agree with other communities that are basically trying to get out of police in schools. We want to make sure that we strengthen the relationship between our school and our police force, right? So just to be clear that I support that and we will work hard to help get that passed.
And I'll say, as my 5th year in, like the SRO in our schools has been a topic of discussion since the day I got here. So to hear Chief Sergeant come forward and speak as passionately about it, to get this better community involvement and have that service in our schools, it's music to my ears, really, because this is something that we have really needed on a full-time basis.
And then the second point I would just make is that the other thing that I depend on is when I'm texting Kevin Brown at 4:00 in the morning saying, what can you do for me? Are we going to be safe, right? I have a history in this town of not canceling school unless it's really necessary. There are times that we've gone to school because we're a small town. We can run the buses around. We're 7 miles long, 3 miles wide. We can get it done. He can get it done. But he does depend on having the equipment and the personnel in order to do that. And so, again, I would just urge you to keep that in mind because you hear the backlash when school gets canceled. Everybody goes into the scramble of where am I sending the kid today? How's this going to operate? Just all of that stuff. If we can get buses out and we can get children to school safely, we're able to operate. And so just keep that in mind as you're considering his needs and what would be important. So I hope you have heard that we have to work together, town and school, to keep things operating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would echo his comments on the school resource officer. I mean, Chief and I have been talking for over 2 years about this, and I've been bugging him actually, when you getting him back. Because when Heath was there, it was fantastic. His rapport with the kids, unbelievable, unmatched. And I think it's a great idea. And I would like to see two, quite frankly, but start with one, small bites, and then the part-time.
In the interest of time, we'll close that out and move into member input, new business.
I have something, Mr. Chairman. I swear it'll take 30 seconds.
Mr. Taylor.
All right. So apologies that I wasn't able to attend the meeting last week. However, I did watch the spirited discussion around the special ed side of things. 20 seconds left. One thing I'd like the members to consider, and we can discuss at a future point, I would like to have the committee consider the fact that maybe we go ahead and move $120,000 into the reserve fund to bring that up to around 240, 250, and then take a reduction of the 120 that was mentioned. And then, you know what, worst case scenario, now at this point, you have plenty in the reserve fund just in case we're wrong. But if we're right, then at that point, we're actually budgeting that appropriately. Done.
Problem is,
Sorry.
reserve fund has to go through a warrant,
Yeah, we can't do that.
so you can make a case.
All right, other member input.
It's interesting idea.
It is an interesting idea. All right, we'll close member input, go into our second public input of the evening. Seeing nobody breaking down the door, but we do have an audience member still with us. Hi, Michelle. We'll close public input and we'll move to adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Douglas, second by Mr. Sun. Roll call vote. Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Harrison? Mr.
Yep.
Leary?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We are adjourned 9-0-0. Next committee meeting, January 6th, where we do bottom line voting on school and town. Thank you very much. Happy holidays and see you in the new year.
Thank you.